A pirate reenactor, 61 years old, scouring the Massachusetts coast after a brutal nor'easter, stumbles upon something utterly out of place, lodged between sea-slicked rocks, half submerged by brackish tidewater. It's a modern baby stroller, gleaming strangely under the gray morning light. Locals first thought it was debris, but when he leaned over to look inside, his weathered face drained of all color. Inside, baby clothes, soaking wet, decades out of fashion, and a cassette recorder, still playing. The sound, a lullaby, warped and whispery, echoing like a ghost from the past. When investigators analyzed the tape, they uncovered something chilling. A child's voice, distorted but real, begging for help. That voice matched a case long buried in police archives. An 8-year-old declared a runaway in 1986, never seen again. Would you dare press play on that recorder? Tell us what you think in the comments. And if these stories pull you in, make sure to subscribe. More are coming. On the rocky coast of Gloucester, Massachusetts, a town etched into the bones of American seafaring history, there lives a man known to most as Captain Doyle. Real name, Everett Doyle, 61 years old. A weather-beaten face, a long silver beard, and the kind of gravelly voice that sounds like it's been soaked in salt water and firewood smoke. For decades, Doyle has made his living as a performer in pirate reenactments, local festivals, historical tours, and even a few documentaries. But he's more than a stage act. He's a born scavenger, a lone walker of coasts, who's spent most of his life combing the shorelines for driftwood, coins, and stories half buried in the sand. He knows these beaches, knows which rocks rattle when the tide turns, which groans in the cliffs mean a storm is coming. That's why, 2 days after the nor'easter of early March 2025, he was out again. The sea had coughed up its usual wreckage: twisted crab traps, busted boat planks, plastic, old bottles. But something about that morning felt heavier. Low mist clung to the coastline like gauze over a wound. The wind had died down, but the air still carried that faint electrical bite you get after lightning has scarred the sky. Doyle moved with practiced caution along the jagged outcroppings at the edge of Pebble Beach. That's when he saw it. Wedges of metal glinted through the fog like a signal. He squinted. From where he stood, it looked like a strange sort of cart, too clean to be wreckage, too new to have come from a passing ship. He climbed closer, boots scraping slick algae-covered stone. As he approached, his gut twisted. It wasn't a cart. It was a baby stroller, wedged firmly between two sharp barnacle-covered boulders. The wheels were intact. Its fabric seat was drenched but oddly unstained, and the brand label, Bugaboo, was still visible in faded embroidery. The type of stroller you'd find in suburban malls, not miles from the nearest town and stuck between the salt-crushed remnants of old tide. He froze. There was no child in the seat, but something else caught his eye. A pale pink onesie, curled and clinging to the inside fabric like something exhaled. Tiny socks, crumpled and soaked, and resting on the seat, half tucked beneath the wet clothing, an old handheld cassette recorder, the kind with those small, clunky buttons, probably from the 80s or early 90s. Its red play light was blinking. He bent down, fingers trembling, not from age but something else, something deeper. Instinct, maybe. He hit stop, then pressed rewind. The tape made that familiar static whir. He hesitated, then pressed play. A lullaby. Soft, melodic, but warped, slow, as if time had bent around it. And underneath the melody, barely audible at first, a voice, small, fragile, a child's. "Help me, please." He dropped the recorder. It thudded against the rocks but didn't break. The voice looped again. "Please, don't leave." He backed away, nearly slipping. All his years on the coast, all the storms and strange flotsam, and nothing had chilled him like this. He didn't touch the stroller again. He didn't move it. He backed off, pulled out his phone, and called the local authorities. When they arrived, they didn't laugh at him. Not this time. Not with the recorder still playing and the voice still whispering. They cordoned off the area. Within hours, yellow tape fluttered in the mist like a warning banner. Word spread fast in Gloucester, and within a day a crowd had gathered. Locals, journalists, even paranormal hobbyists. But no one could explain how a modern stroller, in such perfect condition, had gotten stuck there after a storm, especially on a stretch of beach only accessible at low tide. far from any known trails or roads. When the stroller was taken in for analysis, something else came to light. The cassette recorder, though weathered, was of a model manufactured in 1985. The voice on the tape was sent to the state audio lab. What they found changed the story from strange to terrifying. The voice matched a missing persons case from 1986. The name, Henry Westcott, age 8. Last seen leaving his school in Woburn, Massachusetts. Classified as a runaway after a brief and inconclusive investigation. No trace was ever found. No family members still living. Until now, his name hadn't been spoken aloud in decades. So how did his voice end up on a cassette inside a modern baby stroller, wedged into a rock formation on a beach he'd never lived near? Doyle watched all this unfold from a distance. He gave his statement quietly. He didn't want the attention, but something had changed in him. He admitted during a local interview that he hadn't slept much since that day. It wasn't just the voice, he said. It was how the stroller was wedged in there, like someone had placed it, not tossed it, like it was meant to be found, but only after the storm. No baby footprints were found, no adult ones either. The area was slick, the terrain dangerous, yet somehow that stroller had made it through undamaged, with a decades-old recording that matched a boy who vanished nearly 40 years earlier. Some in the community began to speculate. Could it have been a setup, a prank? But the forensic results ruled out tampering. The cassette was old. The stroller's materials were modern but waterlogged in a way consistent with exposure during the storm. And the audio, though degraded, was authentic. The tape continued. After the lullaby and the pleading voice, there was a long silence. Then, something else. What sounded like heavy breathing. And then, just before the recorder's auto-stop clicked, the faint sound of crashing waves, as if the recording had been made near water, or perhaps ended there. A chilling coincidence, or something deeper? We're just getting started with this one. Stick around. And before we dive deeper, what would you have done if you had found that stroller? Would you have pressed play or walked away? Let us know in the comments, and while you're there, hit the like button if this story has you intrigued. Subscribe if you love a good mystery unraveled piece by piece. And tell us, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. We're curious how far this mystery is reaching. For 3 days after the stroller was retrieved from the rocks, the coastal town of Gloucester remained in a state of hushed uncertainty. The stroller, the recorder, and the soaked baby clothes had been taken to the Massachusetts State Forensics Lab. But for those closest to the coast, fishermen, divers, and lifeguards, there was an unease that lingered like the fog. Something had been uncovered that wasn't ready to be found. Captain Doyle, meanwhile, found himself waking in the early hours, his dreams invaded by the lullaby. Not the melody itself, but the voice underneath it, that childlike whisper, pleading over and over. There was something about the rhythm of the plea, "Please, don't leave," that struck him as more than fear. It felt like memory, like the words had been trapped, waiting to be heard again. Unable to sleep, he returned to the shoreline each dawn. The storm had shifted the sands and stones, creating unfamiliar crevices and channels. It was on the third morning that he noticed something he had missed before. Just north of where the stroller had been found, between two jagged rocks crusted in seaweed, a faint reflection caught his eye. Metallic, but not a can or bottle. He crouched low, brushing aside the wet kelp and sand. There, nearly buried and wedged under a flattened piece of driftwood, was a small rusted object. Round on one end, tapered on the other. He pulled gently. It came loose with a soft sucking sound. A pacifier, but unlike any modern model. The rubber was hardened with time, and the plastic shield had faded to a sickly beige. A symbol had been engraved into the side, a circle with a line through it. Nothing more. Doyle didn't call anyone, not yet. He slipped the pacifier into a plastic bag and kept it in his coat pocket, unsure why. Some part of him believed this wasn't evidence for others. Not yet. This was a trail meant for him to follow. Elsewhere, the official investigation had hit its first major turn. Detective Maria Leland, a career officer in the Essex County Missing Persons Unit, had reopened the Henry Westcott case. Her file included photos from 1986, Henry in a red hoodie and jeans, smiling in front of a classroom door. A second photo, less known, grainy and taken from across the street, showed Henry walking alone, a school bag slung over one shoulder. his sneakers visibly untied. That was the last known image of him. The original investigation into his disappearance was brief. 2 officers had concluded it was likely a runaway situation, noting family stress, though no documentation ever detailed what that meant. His foster mother had died in 1992. His biological parents were never located. But what stood out now was this. Henry's voice on the cassette had been verified by an audio expert using digitized recordings from a long-defunct state-run orphanage in Lexington. Those old files, previously stored on tape reels, contained interview sessions with several children from the 1980s. One of them was Henry. Same vocal pitch, same phrasing patterns. The match was undeniable. So if Henry's voice was now resurfacing, decades later, on a cassette inside a stroller that appeared out of nowhere, what did that mean? Detective Leland was methodical. She traced the brand and serial number of the stroller, confirming it had been manufactured in 2023 and sold in a boutique store in Salem. The credit card trail led to a name, Ruth Chancellor. But here's where it turned even stranger. Ruth Chancellor had no children. She was 78 years old. The card on file had been inactive since her death 6 months earlier, and when authorities checked her estate records, they found something even more puzzling. Ruth had, at one time, worked as a nurse's aide at the Lexington orphanage. During the mid-1980s, she would have known Henry. The cassette recorder, too, was traced. It was a Panasonic RQL30, popular in the mid-1980s for school and dictation use. An antique collector confirmed it was a rare model, and the magnetic degradation on the tape matched 40 years of age, exactly. No one could explain how that recorder ended up in a brand new stroller purchased by a deceased woman, only to be found half buried by seafoam days after a storm. Leland ordered the area combed by specialists. Divers were brought in to scan the shallow reef structures beneath the point where the stroller had lodged. A sonar team mapped the undersea terrain. At first, they found nothing. Then, during the third sweep, a diver surfaced with something blackened and tangled in kelp. It was an old backpack, waterlogged, crusted with algae, but still intact. Inside was a red hoodie, a cracked photograph of a boy and a woman smiling on a pier, and a library card, Henry Westcott. It had been underwater for decades, and yet it floated to the surface the same week the stroller appeared. The pieces were converging too cleanly for coincidence. Captain Doyle, watching from the cliff edge as the divers brought up the pack, felt an almost sickened confirmation. Whatever had happened to Henry, wherever he'd gone, it hadn't been natural, and it hadn't been random. Doyle took the pacifier to Detective Leland. When she saw it, her expression darkened. "That symbol," she said, tracing it. "That's not just a random engraving. I've seen it before." She pulled an old file from her case. It contained symbols once reported by staff at the Lexington orphanage. Strange carvings left in the wooden bunks, drawn in the dirt outside the windows, scratched into walls. Always the same. A circle with a line through it. An internal note from a psychiatrist suggested it was a form of invented language shared by some of the children. He called it the circle game, a private mythology. But there was never any official follow-up. The home was closed in 1989, deemed unsanitary and underfunded. Leland made a decision. She would visit what was left of the Lexington facility. Most of it had been demolished, replaced by a retirement center, but the basement level remained, sealed and boarded. She arranged access, taking Doyle with her. She wasn't sure why she invited him. He wasn't a cop or an expert, but something in his presence, the way he spoke of the ocean, made her feel that he was tied to this more than even he understood. They entered the old foundation through a side door long rusted shut. The air inside was dry but filled with decay. Old furniture, broken toys, rusted fixtures, and on one wall, beneath layers of peeling paint, they found it again, the circle symbol, and beneath it, scratched into wood, Westcott 3:14, help me. The date matched the day of the nor'easter. Captain Doyle stepped back. His heart was pounding now. "This isn't memory," he muttered. "This is a message, a timed one." They left the facility in silence. Leland ordered the scratches photographed and the area sealed off again. She now suspected that Henry Westcott, or something of him, had never truly left that building, or perhaps had never left the grip of something larger. And now, that something had reached out, through a storm, through a stroller, through an object as intimate and vulnerable as baby clothes soaked in salt. Leland turned her attention next to the tape itself. Forensic audio experts at MIT offered to run it through a new AI-enhanced restoration protocol. What they uncovered was horrifying. The child's plea wasn't alone. In the background, beneath the lullaby, and beneath the whispered voice, was another voice, lower, croaking, almost inhuman. It said one thing, over and over, layered beneath the child's cries. "You are not gone. You are not gone." The phrase repeated, echoed, then, abruptly, stopped. That phrase was traced to a note found in one of the orphanage's old psychiatric reports. A quote from a child in 1986, believed to be Henry. The therapist at the time dismissed it as dissociative behavior. But now it felt like a message, or a warning. Gloucester wasn't sleeping much, and neither was Captain Doyle. In the days that followed, Gloucester became a point on a map for all the wrong reasons. Not because of its fishing history or charming sea cliffs, but because the town now hosted one of the most bizarre and unsettling investigations in Massachusetts history. Detective Leland pushed harder. With the help of Captain Doyle and a growing forensic team, she began compiling a case that now straddled decades. Every thread led further into a strange overlap between time, disappearance, and objects that shouldn't exist in the same timeline. That's when she brought in Dr. Calvin Harrow, a forensic linguist from Boston University. Harrow specialized in voice analysis and had worked on Cold War-era decryption cases and posthumous identifications. He was skeptical at first, but once he heard the raw audio, his demeanor changed. "This isn't just a voice," he said. "It's layered, almost intentionally." He performed a deep waveform analysis of the tape using a proprietary system he'd built for identifying multiple speakers in low-quality recordings. What he found sent a chill through the entire investigative unit. There are two speakers, possibly three. One is definitely the child. The second is difficult to classify. It might not even be human vocal cords producing it. The third? Harrow paused before answering. The third might be the same child, but not as a child. As an adult. Leland stared at him. "How is that possible?" "I don't know," he said. "But the tonal fingerprint matches the child's voice, just with the harmonic depth of someone decades older. Almost like he was talking to himself through the tape." Captain Doyle felt his stomach tighten. All his years chasing legends, dressing up for the local pirate fairs, spinning stories to entertain tourists, none of them came close to the story writing itself now. The experts isolated the lower voice, the one that muttered, "You are not gone." It repeated 14 times over the course of the recording, but the last repetition was slightly different. "You are not gone. You are not done." Done with what? No one could say. The phrase became an unofficial motto of the case team, printed at the top of all new documentation, even embroidered in subtle thread on Doyle's coat pocket. It was as if the voice had become part of them now, guiding the investigation forward, deeper. Meanwhile, divers returned to the site again, this time with ground-penetrating sonar to map beneath the rock formations. The reef along the Gloucester coast is notoriously dense, and during storms, deep crevices can form and vanish overnight. What they found buried beneath the reef wasn't just coral or rock debris. It was a hatch, circular, metal, heavily corroded, but undeniably a hatch, bolted into the sea floor. About 3 feet in diameter, rimmed in rust, and impossible to open with standard tools. The sonar had detected a hollow space beneath it. But who would build a hatch in the reef? And more importantly, when? Divers attempted to dislodge it over several hours. Eventually, they succeeded in removing the central bolt. The hatch hissed, not explosively, but with the dull wheeze of air escaping something that hadn't been opened in years, maybe decades. What emerged from the opening was unexpected. A balloon, child-sized, heart-shaped, semi-deflated, and tethered to a short piece of twine. It rose only a few feet before being snagged by the water current and drifting away. Attached to the string, a tag, smeared ink, mostly unreadable. But one line remained clear. "If you find this, please take care of Henry." Leland brought the tag back to the lab. The ink used was consistent with 1980s school markers, those thick, heavily pigmented ones children used in elementary art classes. And the paper? Official state inventory confirmed it came from a batch used by the Lexington orphanage in the 1980s. More than ever, the question loomed. Was something, trying to return Henry? Or worse, had he never truly left? That evening, Doyle sat alone in his home, the pacifier still resting on his mantel. He hadn't told Leland about the dream. In it, the child appeared, not as a ghost, but as a boy seated in the stroller. His eyes were closed. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, behind him, a shadow moved, slow, tall, formless. The boy opened his eyes, looked straight at Doyle, and mouthed a single word. Again. It had haunted him for nights. That word, again. As if this wasn't the first time. The next morning, Leland made a decision that could no longer be avoided. She contacted the FBI. Within hours, a federal team from Quantico arrived. Among them, Dr. Sylvia Tran, an expert in psychological trauma linked to environmental triggers. She reviewed the full case and introduced a chilling hypothesis. "You may be dealing with a temporal echo," she said. "An event so emotionally and psychologically violent that it leaves a lasting imprint on objects, on locations. Something so intense that, under the right conditions, it plays back. A ripple in time. A wound that reopens." Captain Doyle scoffed. "Like a ghost?" "Not quite," Tran replied. "Ghosts are metaphors. This is closer to a scar, one reality bleeding into another." But she wasn't the only expert drawn in. Parapsychologist Dr. Michael Carr visited the site personally. He conducted low-frequency scans near the hatch and recorded something truly bizarre. A hum, measured at exactly 14 hertz, below the human hearing threshold. He cross-referenced it with military data. The only match, experimental signal transmissions from 1985, related to long-range underwater communication, discontinued after unexplained psychological side effects on test subjects. One of those test sites, Cape Ann, just 20 miles from Gloucester, had something, some kind of signal or experiment, interfered with reality itself. Had it taken Henry? We're not saying we know the answer, but the timeline, the evidence, the objects, and the voices, they're all too aligned to dismiss. And here's where we want to hear from you. Do you think this is all coincidence? Could a voice really travel across decades on a piece of magnetic tape? And what exactly do you think "you are not gone, you are not done" means? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if this story has you glued to the screen, don't forget to click like. It helps the mystery spread. Subscribe to the channel for the next part of this investigation, because what we've found so far is only the beginning. We'll be back soon with more. The days that followed brought both revelations and silence. The FBI sealed off the coastal hatch. What lay beneath remained classified, but divers reported glimpses of something more. Something metallic and circular, embedded deeper into the seabed. No one was allowed to confirm its nature publicly, but whispers escaped, as they always do. A tunnel, a chamber, maybe even an old escape pod from some unknown experiment. What could possibly connect an orphanage in Lexington, a child's voice on cassette, and a sealed hatch under the sea? Some believed it was nothing more than mass coincidence amplified by grief and time. But for others, for the ones who'd touched the tape, heard the voice and felt the change in the air, it was clear something was trying to come back, or had never fully left. Detective Leland was the first to break. She didn't resign, not formally, but she left Gloucester, abandoning her files and official duties. Her final memo to the Bureau was simple. "Every case has a pattern, except this one. I've heard that child's voice in my dreams. I don't think we found him. I think he found us." Captain Doyle stayed. He couldn't leave, even if he wanted to. Something inside him had been rewired the moment he looked into that stroller. His dreams grew more intense. No longer just visions of the boy, but of things surrounding him. Walls without time, voices layered in impossible harmony, lullabies that melted into screams. Then, on the morning of April 14th, exactly 1 month after the storm, he returned to the rocks. The tide was unusually low. The sea had pulled back like breath before a gasp, and in that hollowed landscape, Doyle saw something waiting. Another stroller, same model, same brand, clean. But this time, no cassette, no clothes, just a small object sitting perfectly in the center of the seat. A child's tooth, clean, unblemished, wrapped in old gauze, and beside it, tucked under the strap, a folded photograph, black and white, faded. It showed a group of children, all in old-fashioned clothing, standing outside what appeared to be a brick building, the orphanage. One of the children looked directly at the camera. He wore a red hoodie, his shoelaces untied, and something else. In the corner of the image, behind the children, a man, tall, lanky, wearing a long coat, face obscured, holding a stroller, and from the stroller, a small hand reached up, fingers spread. Doyle took the photo to a photo historian. The paper stock, manufactured in the 1940s. But the stroller, a 2023 Bugaboo Lynx, modern, impossible. And there, in tiny writing on the back of the photo, barely visible, "You are not gone." The photo now sits in an evidence locker at the Gloucester Police Department inside a sealed plastic sleeve, but people report strange things when they're near it. A scent of salt and baby powder, a hum at the edge of hearing. One officer swears she heard crying. Another claimed he saw the man in the long coat walking through the corridor on the night shift. Still, the case remains open, labeled anomalous. The Lexington orphanage basement has been resealed. The hatch beneath the reef has been quietly reinforced with concrete. The new stroller was collected, but the tooth? DNA tested. It wasn't from Henry. It belonged to someone else. A child who went missing in Maine in 2002. Her case, too, was closed as a runaway. The FBI is now reviewing 26 similar files from across New England, all involving children declared runaways, all cases closed with minimal investigation, all with some minor connection. An orphanage, a foster system, a coastal town. The cassette recorder has stopped working, but its contents, digitally preserved, are now part of a classified psychological case study run through a joint task force. As for Captain Doyle, he's still in Gloucester, still walking the shore every morning, still watching the rocks. He says he'll know when it happens again, because it will. The sea doesn't forget, it only buries. And when it returns what it has taken, it does so on its own terms. So now we ask you, what do you believe? Was Henry's voice a leftover fragment from the past? Or was it a cry sent across time, through salt, steel, and grief, to warn us? And if so, who will be next? Would you press play if you found that stroller? Would you dare lift the hood? Let us know in the comments. Your thoughts matter, and your theories might just help us uncover the next piece of this puzzle. If this story pulled you in, if it left you chilled or captivated, don't forget to like the video. It helps this story reach others who might know something we don't. Subscribe to our channel for more stories like this, because there are more. And make sure to turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what we find next. You are not gone. You are not done. We'll be waiting. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and don't walk the shore alone.